Hello and welcome to Middlesex Moments, the radio show of Middlesex Community College in Middletown, Connecticut. I'm Steve Minkler, the lead campus administrator and academic dean at Middlesex. And as always, we bring you these shows from our Center for New Media here at our main campus at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown. And today's program, it's actually a Meet the Professors program. And joining me is Rich Lenoce, who's professor of digital media production, and he has served as director of our Center for New Media. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'm glad to have you. Now, Rich, you're actually one of our more veteran faculty, so maybe, I think part of the purpose of the Meet the Professors series is to have our audience learn more about the kinds of professors and the people that we have working here. And when did you first come to Middlesex?
Well, first, I taught as an adjunct in 1983. I had just gotten out of college. And the program was transitioning from, it was called cable television to broadcast communications. And so there was a year in there where there was nobody in charge except a bunch of adjuncts. And I happened to be one of them. So I, at the time, was the youngest person on campus. Now I'm one of the most veteran. They used to call me the kid. Now they call me that old guy.
And I think in that time, the nature of this industry has changed tremendously. I mean, I had worked in this field as well. You and I have known each other for a long time, but it is between the change in technology and how audiences use media, it's far different than it was.
We used to have rooms like to do audio recording. We would have, racks of reel-to-reel tapes so that you could get 8 tracks. Because you'd have to copy from track to mix down from track to track to track, from one machine to another. And then you'd have to make copies of your reel-to-reel to cassette or whatever. Didn't have the technology to make a DVD, and that was 1993 when I came here full-time. So that was purely analog, and we had just gotten a Commodore 64 computer to do graphics, which was kind of silly. I went to a retro computer show a few weeks ago. I said, I used to have one of those in my office.
It's pretty sad to see things that you've used in your life to now appear in museums. Isn't that true?
And a whole class worked on that one machine. So it's come around completely. I remember playing with Adobe Premiere when it was version 1 in like 1996, and it was a little thumbnail thing. And now, we do everything in it, video-wise and special effect-wise.
So when you started at Middlesex back in 1983, you said as an adjunct. So were you also working somewhere else at the time, and this was a part-time gig for you?
Yeah, it was kind of, I was in graduate school at Southern Connecticut State University, and I had a full-time job at Quinnipiac University as a media specialist, and then moved from there to Aetna here in Middletown, which I became more familiar with Middlesex Community College because I used to hire interns from here, and was really, really impressed with the students and the program.
And over time, how did you phase from your work at Aetna into Middlesex?
Well, we had about 200 people in the corporate communications department, and Aetna had decided it was going through massive changes. All the insurance companies were in the early 90s, and they decided that was something they wanted to get out of and farm it out to independent companies instead of having full-time employees doing video production. A lot of it then was satellite broadcasting, satellite communication from office to office around the world. So it was pretty interesting and pretty high tech, but they just wanted out of it. And it was much less expensive, obviously, to do that. So they eliminated the department. And it just, by coincidence, the day I got laid off was the day I was hired here full-time. So, so it was great. It was just perfect. One of those things in life you just couldn't predict if you wanted to. So it was pretty lucky.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where timing is everything, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So speaking of timing, it is time for a quick break. And after we return, we'll be back here on Middlesex Moments with Rich Lenoce, and I'll see you in a moment. And welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. And this is Steve Minkler, and joining me today is Rich Lenoce, who's professor of digital media production and director of our Center for New Media, which is where these radio shows come from. Rich and I were talking about his background and what brought him to Middlesex. So we were talking about you became full-time at Middlesex in the mid-90s and how much change there has been in technology over the time. But I would imagine one of the constants must be the interest among students for this kind of work. It seems it's both high-tech, There's sort of, if you will, glamorous parts about working in the media. And what do you see that students bring to the table when they come to take classes in your Center for New Media?
Well, if you go back to the 90s, it was really hard to produce a video show. You either needed a studio with $500,000 worth of equipment in it, or you needed this big, heavy, bulky camera that you could take around, and then you needed all these tape decks to edit. And it was really hard, so the focus was on just getting things to work. Just making sure your batteries are charged and that you have enough tape with you when you go out, and that it's not too cold, or all kinds of problems that could happen. And now, because it's so ubiquitous, our cameras have high-definition video recorders in them, that now the focus becomes on the creative aspect, telling stories, who we can focus on. It used to be really hard to do that when you couldn't get your equipment to work. Mm-hmm. But now, it just works, and students can pretty much use in some of their classes any camera they want. We have professional broadcast level cameras in our facility, but sometimes we have them shoot gonzo, with a phone or an iPad or whatever they happen to use. So they can focus now more on the story and the other aspects, the aesthetic aspects, rather than just getting things to work. So they oftentimes bring original ideas and stories and things that they're interested in today that, it's not sometimes your standard view of things. You're seeing things from a teenager's perspective, basically, or somebody in their early 20s, or someone who just got out of the service and wants to tell a story about that, or they've had life problems. And so a lot of the things that we see at community college, the diversity of age, of experience, now just rises to the top. We not only get creative narrative pieces, but we also get documentaries, things that students are interested in and concerned about in their community. And that's actually one of the best parts of it.
Mm-hmm. And I would think in terms of storytelling, this is a great way for a student who wishes to express their thoughts and their feelings, or express their story in a way that uses the technology. But there's got to be a lot of writing and a lot of preparation behind this. It's not just magic. You walk in the door and boom, you got a movie made.
No, and that's one of the misnomers students have when they come in. They think like, oh, I can do this by myself. And you really can't. You can be an expert in one thing, and you could be the orchestra conductor, the director, who kind of overall directs things. But it's hard to be able to do everything, and writing is the basis of that. The technology changes. It's always going to be in flux. It's only going to get easier to do the productions. But what really matters is the content, the story, and how well structured that story is, how literate that story is, what kind of audience interest there is in that story. There's no point in producing a story if nobody's going to be interested in it. And we see that. A student will come in and have a specific concern. And I have to go, wait a second, that's only a concern of yours. How can you make that a concern to an audience? So we talk a lot about that. And we're certainly able to focus on that more, the base part, what we call the pre-production. Because if your pre-production is really good, you got a really good script, and everybody on the crew knows what they're supposed to do, at the end part of it, when it gets finally put together and reconstructed in the editing process, it goes like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you, in the class, do you have students sort of act as a sounding board for each other's ideas to say, I like that idea, or that idea might not work? Does that kind of happen in the classes that you offer?
It does. It happens more in the advanced classes. And that's because, a freshman will think this idea is really great, and they'll be very sensitive to other students' criticism because they don't know that student and that student's background. But in the advanced classes, definitely, everybody reviews everybody else's work. And that's really exciting to hear, because you see students getting excited about what other people are doing, and they're also contributing to that. They're also serving on the crew, helping out, providing input. So it's a collaborative experience. Yeah, somebody would be in charge of a project. We're going to be doing this show on video. We're going to do 4 or 5 segments in the spring on video, and that is a collaborative grade. And students were really, when I went to my freshman students and I said, okay, here's how the course is going to work, is that you're contributing to this person's grade. And if you mess up, everybody suffers. And because that's what happens in real life. The production suffers. So you have to be on top of your game. And that's a whole new way of viewing things as collaborative. Students become very scared of it, probably because they had bad experiences in high school where, they were in a group of 5 people doing a project and one of the people didn't do anything and they had to do all the work. And there's a lot of that history. But, my job is going to be the orchestra conductor and make sure that string section is as strong as the woodwinds. Mm-hmm. So that's the goal. And in teaching that class, I've given in that class every student an A. Many times, because everybody deserved it, because it was their show. They owned it. And that's a good feeling for students to have. They don't realize it going in.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So again, I'm talking to Rich Lenoce, who's a professor of digital media production and the director of our Center for New Media here at Middlesex Community College. And Rich, you've used a couple of analogies that speak to music, conducting the orchestra, so to speak, because you are in media production largely doing work that is group related, but you yourself have somewhat of a musical background. And maybe how does that kind of work into the work that you do every day with students and as a media professional yourself?
I have a funny story about this. I hired an intern to do editing when I was at Aetna. And the person had no musical background and was a really lousy editor because they didn't understand pacing. And in music, it's all about the rhythm. I give it a 6 for the rhythm. So music plays an important part, and of course, it's a component, and a rather large component of film and video. I mean, you go to a movie today. Oftentimes, what drives the movie is the what would Star Wars be without John Williams' score?
Right.
I mean, it would be nothing. Or Jaws. Or any of those great films that we love, The Godfather, whatever it happens to be, it's driven by the music. It's not a conscious thing. It's a subconscious thing. And editors and people doing post-production and people doing the writing have to have that rhythm to it. And it has to be, natural. I don't know if you can necessarily teach it. You can understand it. But it's, you say to a student, okay, this is going to be a suspenseful scene, so you need to pull back. Mm-hmm. You need to make it work slowly. And then pick up the pace. You're driving the emotions of people, just like music does.
Well, and you yourself are a musician, right?
I play piano, yeah, and I used to play the tuba.
The tuba. Yeah. Those are two very different instruments.
Well, you play piano and bass. So.
That's true, yeah.
2 very different instruments.
That's true.
It's just a big bass that I blow into, is the tuba. I used to love playing it.
And how long have you been playing music?
Oh, since I was 7, so... I don't know, 50 years.
Yeah.
So
it really does become embedded in who you are and how you, kind of perceive the world or perceive the work that you're doing in many ways.
Right.
Yeah. So with that in mind, as a media professional, take yourself out of the role as a teacher, but I'll ask you about that in a moment. But as a professional in media, what do you consider to be your strength? You talked earlier about the technical aspects of production, but then the writing and the organizing. What was your strength, or what is your strength as a media person?
It was always technology. I'm a technology geek. Students will say, I've had students say in class, and you've probably heard this too, because I know you're a technology geek yourself. Yep. You don't mind me saying.
Nope, I am.
Somebody over the age of 30 doesn't really understand technology. Well, I started as an engineer, building facilities, as you know, because that's how we met, and I built a facility here. So I understand architecture and engineering and the technology that goes into media production. So that was always my strength. So I've had to acquire the creative aspect. It came along a lot slower.
Okay. Now, as a teacher who teaches in this field, what is your strength as a teacher?
I think my strength is taking complicated information and making it simple so that students can understand it. Somebody who has no background in it at all. We have such a range of students. I have students who come in, they're older students, maybe their accessibility to tech hasn't been as great as, say, somebody who's 18 who grew up with it. So trying to make it simple. It's kind of like if you have a car mechanic, and some car mechanics will go off on the technology of the car, and you're wondering what's wrong with your car. But then there's somebody else who can explain it in much simpler ways so it makes sense. And that's kind of my role a lot of times, is to take the complicated and make it simple.
Okay. Yeah, and I would think, too, as an instructor, you also play that role, like you were describing earlier, of the symphony conductor. You are kind of managing all the elements of what happens in a production within a class while teaching the students in an easy-to-understand way of what their roles and responsibilities are.
Right. Look, one of the issues I see with our production that we're going to do with the Middlesex Moments on video is that I'm going to have a tough time letting go. Because I'm going to be the orchestra conductor at the beginning, and then I've got to step aside and let them do it and not mess it up because it's going to be on cable and you'll be hearing it here. So my role has to be when to step away. And it's like that every day. How much help should I give a student? Where they, should I sit there and edit the project for them if they're having trouble with editing? No, I have to sit back and think about what I can contribute to get them, to where they need to be, but not control it.
Right. Well, good. Well, speaking of stepping away, we do have to step away for a quick break here from the Middlesex Moments radio show. And when we return, a little more with Rich Lenoce, and we'll talk more specifically about what the Center for New Media is. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Middlesex Moments. This is Steve Minkler, together with Rich Lenoce, Professor of Digital Media Production and Director of the Center for New Media here at Middlesex Community College, where these radio programs come from every week. Rich, tell us a little about the Center for New Media. Middlesex has had a program in broadcast cinema, broadcast communications for a number of years, but the Center for New Media represented a significant change a few years ago. So tell us more about how that happened.
Well, when I first got here in 1993, the facility was fairly new, but 20 years had gone by and there had been no investment in the curriculum, in the facility. Well, the curriculum had gotten better and stronger. We had stronger business partnerships over the years, but there was no investment by the state into our facility. And now we have, after a $2.5 million federal grant, I think it's the most advanced media production facility in the country of its kind at a community college or even at most universities.
Okay. And why was the federal government interested in helping us build the Center for New Media?
Well, Connecticut has turned out to be a hub of media production. Just down the road, we have almost 6,000 people at ESPN. You're talking almost another 1,000 at WWE. You've got NBC Sports down in Stamford. Even the Yes Network, the Yankee Network, is here in Connecticut. And you have hundreds of businesses that support those. Other businesses, if you go around Bristol, there's just a circle of media production companies that provide support to ESPN. So the state's been really good at attracting these companies. There's Blue Sky Animation, which does the Ice Age movies and many, many other animated films. And so these companies need people to hire. And the ascension in media production is fairly rapid. So, somebody could start 1 year at age 20, graduating from here, being a production assistant, say at an ESPN, and in 3 years be a technical director. It moves pretty quick. And then people move out and they go do other things. They move to Florida or California or whatever. So there's this demand for entry-level positions here. And the federal government, the state was aware of it. And the state got a hold of some discretionary money, training money from the federal government. Had received a large grant in health and life science, and with that came $2.5 million in discretionary money to put towards a field that was growing in the state to invest in. So they pointed it here at Middlesex Community College because the workforce development people knew about our program and that it was in need of an upgrade, and it was a real resource for the state and for these businesses.
Right. And one of the key features of the program is the fact that we do have an arm of the Center for New Media that does professional production work for outside clients that we involve students with. We've called it the Corporate Media Center, but tell us more about how the Corporate Media Center works together with the academic part of the Center for New Media.
Yeah, basically we have a production service that the college offers to businesses. We've worked with most of the major Fortune 500 companies here in the state, Pratt & Whitney, Hamilton-on-the-Strand, Cheeseboro Ponds, all these large corporations doing video productions for them. And they come to us. We don't advertise it, and it's not like a business. But they come to us because they want an educational partnership. The Department of Environmental Protection we have a contract with because we have an environmental science group, and we have an environmental science professors who can contribute to the productions and work in partnership with the business. So they come to us looking to have that partnership with education. And students get involved in it. A lot of internships students will go on, and a video program has one editor, and it's somebody's full-time job, and they'd be an editing assistant, but they might not be editing an actual program. Well, here they could get the opportunity to do a rough cut of a program. They could get the opportunity to be on set running camera, where they wouldn't get that if they were at a broadcast facility. They'd be assisting, but they wouldn't actually be doing that. And so we take the skills students learn in classes, and we're selective about it. Not every student has the skills, the high enough skills to work on these productions, because they are extremely high quality. We've gotten something like 8 Telly Awards, which is the equivalent in corporate media of the Emmy Awards or the Oscars. So we're known for having very high quality productions, and that's led by one of the most creative people I know. His name is Dan Nocera. He's our in-house producer.
So we're giving students this real world experience in the classroom, but also as part of the productions they do with Dan. And what do students do after they graduate? You've kept in touch with some of our alumni. What are some of them doing now in this world?
Oh, wow. I just had, I teach a class called Careers in Media, so I bring them back into the class. One student is an editor, works for Shonda Rhimes' company. She's the producer of Grey's Anatomy and many other shows that are on television, and he's an editor on those shows. High end, another person, Kelly Kreeser, works for HBO. She's the associate producer of Ballers, and she just got off a project. Showtime has a show called The Affair. I think it's in its 4th season now, and she was associate producer for that. So many of our students leave and they do those things, big things, and some of them are working in our community. The video producer at the local Salvation Army, Laura Kruger's a graduate of ours, and her son is a student right now in the program. So we see these multi-generational, and we all keep in touch with each other and follow what we're all doing and try and get our alumni involved. But some of them are doing great things in the community. Some of them are doing great things out in, whether it's Hollywood or over at ESPN. We've got a whole probably 30 graduates over at ESPN all doing really great stuff.
Okay. And you've had a couple of alumni events on campus where you've brought back dozens of students who've been through the program.
Yeah, well, we have our Red Moon Festival every year. We get a whole bunch of grads to come back, alumni to come back. And we've had a couple of meetings of alum. We're talking about, we have an Arts and Media Festival every year, and that usually brings many alum back. That's held in May, and it's basically one floor of our library is turned into a gallery. Another floor is a digital gallery. So one's an art gallery, one's a digital gallery, and then we have a film showcase up in our multipurpose room where we present student work.
Yeah, and that's we've done this the Arts and Media Festival well over 10 years now, and the thing that's always impressed me with the films that are shown there is the variety of subject matter. Mm-hmm. Naturally, a variety of lengths of material because it depends on the class they've in. But the thing that's always impressed me is the quality of the work, and that really speaks well for the students, but speaks well for you and your colleagues in the Center for New Media. Yeah,
I have some really creative. As I say, I'm the only one on our full-time faculty that doesn't have an Emmy. And one of my part-timers has 8.
You better fix that.
I think I nominated once, but yeah. So I have these very creative people I get to work with every day, which is just so much fun. And we've been working together now for 25 years, and it just makes it a joy to come to work with people who are that creative. Dan Nocera, I mentioned, Rick Erickson, whose background's ESPN, John Schaefer, who's a videographer, cinematographer before coming here, and we have some amazing adjuncts who've worked in Hollywood, and Barbara Carroll Rogers worked on many shows like The Jeffersons and things out in Hollywood, working on scripts, and she teaches our script writing class. So we've got some really talented people.
That's great. So thinking about that, and you've been here for a few years now, you said when you started you were the kid. So thinking about your experience and reflecting on your time at Middlesex, if you were to talk with a new faculty member, somebody just coming to Middlesex now, what are some things you might tell them about what keeps you at Middlesex and why they should really spend their career here with us?
Well, I always try and connect with the new faculty when they come on board, because I think being around long enough, you can be a resource. One of the things is the diversity of the students, and that you really have to learn to understand them. So if you come from a university background, a very traditional university, large university background, this small college is a very different place. And students are here for a variety of reasons. Whether it's money, whether they just don't want to leave the area, they just want to be close to their family and their home, and maybe they have children, some grandchildren, and things like that. So you really have to understand why they're here to be an effective teacher, I think, and play to that. And that actually is the most rewarding part, because they bring their stories to the class. I taught public speaking last last spring. And it was the best class I ever taught, because their job was to give speeches about themselves and their interest. And there were people from, I had 5 international students in there. I had students from all different backgrounds. Some working in banks, some are moms and single moms, and some are social workers. And just the stories that they would tell were just so heartwarming and rewarding. It's the same in the film area. I do a lesson on where stories come from, because students get all hung up about a story. You know, they think like they have to have this big, they have to think like they're doing Star Wars. But no, they come from your life. You know, those are always the best stories, the most intimate stories, the ones that reach out and touch people.
Right.
And trying to get them tuned to that is a real important, I think, aspect of teaching, whether that's teaching in the English department or foreign language or in media, in art, even the sciences, understanding that.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for sharing some of your story with us today on part of our Meet the Professor series at Middlesex Moments. So we look forward to the Arts and Media Festival, which happens every May here on campus, and to seeing more of the work that you and your students are doing out there. We might even see it on cable TV someday, right?
Yes.
So again, thanks to Rich Lenoce. I'm Stephen Minkler, again, Lead Administrator and Academic Dean at Middlesex Community College, and we're happy to bring you the Middlesex Moment Show every week here on WLIS WMRD. And we invite you to visit us on campus here, 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown, and at our Meriden Center, now located at Platt High School in the city of Meriden. And of course, you can always visit us online 24/7 at mxcc.edu. So until next time, this is Steve Minkler for Middlesex Moments.